I'm just going to wait a minute for the live stream to start so I can mute my other self. But we'll go ahead and get started in a minute. June, could you screen share? Okay, welcome everyone. This is the second meeting of the Government Transition Advisory Committee's Voter and Candidate Education and Outreach Subcommittee. Today is Wednesday, November 29th, and we will be here from 4 to 5:30 p.m. My name is Julia Meyer. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Engagement and Community Participation Manager for the transition. Staff is going to facilitate this meeting, hopefully for the last time, until you appoint co-chairs. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to take a moment to go over some Zoom logistics. This meeting is being live streamed to YouTube. After the meeting ends, we'll put a copy of the video recording onto the transition website under past meetings and events. For today's meeting, we have closed captioning available. To access closed captioning, click on the CC button on the bottom of your screen. Committee members, please change your chat settings to everyone so that those attending can follow along. And please remember that the meeting chat is part of the public meeting record. For community members listening in, we have the Zoom Q&A feature available. You can submit questions or comments through the Q&A function. We may not answer them all live during the meeting, but your questions and comments also become part of the public meeting record. At today's meeting, we're not taking verbal public comment, but you can submit public comment at any time by calling 311 or by emailing us at transition@portlandoregon.gov or going to the city's transition webpage and filling out an online comment survey form. If you want to give verbal public comment, you could do so at the next full meeting of the Government Transition Advisory Committee, which is next Tuesday, December 5th at 6 p.m. Next slide, please. So for today's agenda, we're going to do some committee business, and then we're going to follow up from last meeting's Train the Trainer session. And we're going to spend the bulk of the meeting talking about the city's voter education work plan and budget. Before we adjourn today, we will preview our next steps. Next slide, please. So no one, I think, has told me that they cannot come today, so we expect full attendance. Our first order of subcommittee business is to approve the November 7th meeting summary that was sent out last week. Does anyone have any proposed revisions to that meeting summary before I entertain a motion? Okay, could I get a motion to approve those?
I'll move.
Second.
All those in favor? Thumbs up or aye? Any opposed? No, thank you. June, are we having a hard time forwarding the slides? Oh, okay. Well, you can forward again then. So the next order of business is to appoint the first co-chair rotation. So based on this subcommittee overview document that you all approved at your first meeting, we outlined some roles of the subcommittee co-chairs: providing leadership, facilitating meetings, leading discussions, keeping us on time and task, collaborating with me and other folks on staff to set the meeting agendas, and to help encourage consensus decision-making amongst the group. Co-chairs will rotate. We didn't set a specific time in your subcommittee's overview. And Bill and Leah have volunteered to serve as the first co-chair rotation. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments about that, about co-chairing, before I entertain a motion on that? Okay, I don't see any. Could someone make a motion?
So moved.
I second. This is Jane.
Thank you, Jane. All those in favor? Thumbs up, hands up. Any opposed? Perfect. Thank you so much. So, after this meeting, I will not be facilitating these anymore. So deeply appreciate it. Thank you for being willing to serve. Next slide, please. Just the last order of subcommittee business, just like in our full committee, is to review our working agreements. These you approved as the same as the full committees at your last meeting. So the working agreements state as follows. 1, in discussions, challenge ideas rather than individuals. Offer constructive suggestions. 2, approach different opinions with curiosity. Seek to understand. 3, keep the needs and concerns of the local community and the larger region at the forefront of your work. 4, arrive on time and prepared to the best of your ability. Let the group know if you are unable to attend a meeting. The co-chairs will aim to incorporate tools for breathers. Number 5, keep multitasking to a minimum. Number 6, keep focus on the objectives of the meetings. Utilize co-chairs to note additional topics for discussion by submitting topics in writing via email. Next slide, please. Number 7, honor the decisions of the group. Number 8, contribute to the overall success of the group by finding ways to participate that best meet your needs. Number 9, step up, step back. Collectively work to ensure that every member who wants to be heard is heard. Number 10, embrace conflict and work with your fellow committee members and staff to find ways to give each other feedback. The co-chairs will aim to incorporate various feedback tools. And finally, number 11, use I statements. Next slide, please. So I think I'm going to turn it over to James to do some follow-up on our last meeting's Train the Trainer session.
Thank you, Julia. Before we dive into the work plan and the voter education plan for you all, we just wanted to give a little bit of time to cover the last session that we had. We moved very quickly through that presentation and time was limited. So first we have a couple corrections that I want to make, and then we'll open it up for some questions just in case you felt like you didn't have enough time to get questions answered last time. If we can move to the next slide. So this error was made at the time. We had a great presentation. Again, want to thank our national expert, Grace, for giving that Train the Trainer. It was really good. There are, however, a few things that we do a little differently in Portland than they do at other places, policy choices that we made for certain reasons, which I'm happy to go into. But the important thing is we tried to correct these at the time in chat, but we also followed up corrections, and the presentation that you all received was fixed before you got it. But I still want to make sure, just to cover all of our bases, want to make sure we cover it real quick here so there's no misunderstandings. So the way that we handle overvotes, skipped rankings, or repeat rankings, I think repeat rankings were fine, but I'll go over them all anyway, just to make sure. So in Portland, with our ranked choice voting, if you have an overvote, which is any time that somebody chooses more than one candidate in a single ranking, the way that it'll be tabulated is that column will get ignored as if nothing is entered in there. We'd have no way to determine the intent. That's how it's dealt with everywhere. Pretty much all jurisdictions do that. The difference is that most jurisdictions will then exhaust a ballot once they get to that overvote situation. But Portland actually does not. We made a policy decision that we felt that we wanted to try to capture as much of the voter intention. So what instead happens is that column, so in the example here in the top left, rank 1 would basically be ignored because we can't tell who they actually want to vote as rank 1. And then rank 1 and rank 2, both of those columns would essentially be treated as if they were being skipped over. So rank 3, candidate C, would now be elevated to their highest ranking. And in the first round of tabulation, candidate C would get this ballot's vote. And in many other jurisdictions, and I think what was explained there was that the ballot would be exhausted. So that's a slight difference, but I want to be clear about that as you speak to voters. The next thing is for the skipped rankings. Most jurisdictions, if you skip one ranking, it'll sometimes do the same as we do here in Portland. So if you see in that top right example, between rank 1 and rank 3, they've skipped one ranking. Oftentimes they'll just skip over that and they'll be fine. Some jurisdictions will automatically exhaust when you get skipped ranking, but many jurisdictions, if you see later in that example between rank 3 and 6, if you get to multiple skipped rankings, they'll then exhaust that ballot. In Portland, again, we wanted to try to capture as many of the votes as possible. So again, we essentially will compress. So in the example here on the top right, this would be rank 1 would be candidate A, just like is shown here. But then if that candidate is eliminated or is already voted in a multi-winner, we would then go to candidate C as their next highest ranking. And then it would skip all the way down to the rank 6 to candidate B would be the next highest ranking. So it would effectively be as if they had ranked candidate B as rank 3. And then finally, with the repeat rankings, again, I don't think that this was given incorrectly, but it's just so we understand. Here in this example in the lower left, you'll see that they really like candidate A, so they ranked them 3 times. They'll still get candidate A as their first choice here, but ranks 2 and 3 will be ignored as if they are just a skipped, nothing was filled in. They'll be voided and they'll go immediately to that 4th ranking of candidate F. So candidate F will essentially be elevated as if it was their second highest ranking on that particular example. So I think that sort of corrects it. Pretty minor thing. And like I said, we do it a little bit differently. We just made some policy decisions when we were writing this, but hopefully that covers it. In addition to that, we received some of your feedback on the presentation. So we're working, with our contractor and with our national experts and with Sophia and me to kind of incorporate that and try and make the best possible presentation that we can. So we really appreciate the feedback you've given. So now if we're going to open it up, if there's questions on either what I just covered, or if you had questions that you feel didn't get answered in the last time, we've set aside a little bit of time here to help address those.
I'm going to maybe alternate between hands up and reading some from the chat, if that's okay. Terry, we'll start with you. Go ahead. Oh, Terry, you're muted.
Yeah, quick question on the repeat rankings. If, for example, it's not repeated 1, 2, 3, but if the repeat is 1, 3, 5, is it the same thing? You keep 1, drop 2, move it over, drop the other one, move it over. Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question, Terry. So yeah, it's the first time that they rank it, it'll be used as if it's a normal vote. Anytime after that, no matter where it appears, even if it skips several, it will be counted as essentially a skipped ranking. So it just won't be counted at all by the tabulation machine. So that's a great question.
Thanks. I'm going to read one from the chat. Just to make sure, I'm assuming that the term exhaust in this context means that the ballot would be thrown out in other jurisdictions. Is that correct?
Yeah, I wouldn't be careful about using the term throw out. We're not really throwing out the ballot. It just means the ballot will no longer be used for tabulation in that process. With ranked choice voting, you will often get to a point where you will start again and do the rounds again. So in that case, it would still be counted. But yeah, an exhausted ballot essentially in jargon means that it is no longer used in the tabulation process to count towards a vote. So we're just not exhausting it in these cases. But if you took your top left example, the overvotes, if rank 1 was all they had and they didn't have anything after that, so they had 4 candidates rank 1 and that was it, we have no way to determine what they wanted there. That would be essentially an exhausted ballot, and it just wouldn't count anything from that ballot, unfortunately.
Thank you. Bill.
Well, I just wanted to comment, doing some background reading. The document that's the guidance for candidates has a section on ranked choice voting. And James, I think I don't know if I saw these images, but it captured what was going to, how they'd be counted or not counted. So it was a helpful written reference.
Yeah, that's a great point. We have currently the references in that guide, and we're adding version 2 is coming out, which we got some feedback from you all. We much appreciated, and the version 2 will come out by I think January 5th is our day, and that version 2 actually will have some images as well. So we went ahead and added in some sample ballot images because we think that'll be helpful in just further illuminating. But yeah, I appreciate that is a great place to go to get more information about it. And we hope candidates will use that.
Thank you. There's one more. Could you repeat how it would be counted for skipped rankings?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the top right example is our skipped rankings. So in this example, or any time that we come across a skipped ranking, essentially we will ignore that whole column as if it doesn't exist. So we will continue to count whatever we can in that ballot. Our policies, we want to count as many possible rankings from a ballot as possible. So in the example here, we would count candidate A as rank 1, and that is their top ranking. That's the first ranking. If candidate A is, say, eliminated, in the first round or a subsequent round, and we can't count them, we would then move to the next available ranking that we can count, which in this case would be rank 3, candidate C. So effectively, candidate C would be their second highest ranking. It just kind of compresses up. The software will essentially look for the next possible vote that we can interpret, and it will count that as their next highest ranking. The legal code, the way we wrote it into the code is the next highest active ranking. So in this case, it would go from rank 1 to rank 3 to rank 6, and everything else would just be skipped over. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm trying to rephrase a bit just to make it more clear, but yeah.
Thank you. I know we have a little bit more time. We don't have to take it, but I just want to pause and give folks a moment to think if they have any other questions or comments from follow-up from our last meeting. Bill, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I apologize. I don't want to overdo it, but James, have you or others sort of estimated how long it's going to take to count all these votes? And then if it's real close and one has to have a hand count, I'm just guessing it's a matter of weeks, not days.
So we do have some official language from Multnomah County that will be doing the counting, that this is the language that we're using in our messaging, that you can expect some preliminary results sometime after 8 p.m. that will be preliminary results. As with all elections, those results are only preliminary, and we cannot count the final tabulation until we get everything in. As with nothing is changing in this year, in that we still have 7 days after the end of after election day, we'll continue to get ballots in. So it's entirely possible that whatever those preliminary results are might look very different from the results, and that's not a ranked choice voting thing. That's a mail-in ballot Oregon thing. So I would expect at least 7 days before we have all the ballots in and they're counted. And then beyond that, then we have 28 days of the county gets to continue to certify, do the results, they'll do rounds before they give a final certification. So although the county has given us that language of you can expect some sort of preliminary results, the night of and the day after, I want to caution that it's ranked choice voting. So you may see someone at the top of the ranking on that preliminary results, but as rounds go on, that doesn't mean that person will necessarily win, and the results may shift around. And that's really no different than any other election. Any election you have, you could see the election night results. Somebody is ahead on the percentages with how many votes have been counted, but by 2 days later, you find out it's a close race, and we see that hasn't happened. So hopefully that helps to indicate that, and we expect December 2nd is the deadline for certification from the county to us. And then the city has 12 days after that to certify it with council and to report and proclaim the results of the election. So those are the exact days that will happen. if it happens a little faster, great, but there's no reason to believe that it'll be any slower in that process than it has been in any other year. Yeah.
Thanks, James. Terry.
Yeah, a quick follow-up. By saying preliminary results, are you talking about running the algorithm, or are you just going to show the first choice votes, first choice?
It hasn't been determined yet, like exactly. I mean, we're still a ways away. The county's still working on the May election, so the machines are still being certified. There's still a lot of steps in the process before we get to that point. But it is very important to understand they are preliminary because it's not clearly final results. We may not even have all of the ballots in. The results on election night are always preliminary until you have enough ballots in. So it's just preliminary in the sense that this is not a final decision, but it will run the tabulation will happen the same whether there's one ballot or 600,000 ballots. The tabulation goes through the machine, and the machine has the algorithm that it runs no matter how many ballots there are. That doesn't change. That is something that's simply encoded into the tabulation software. So that will run every time. So any result that they give you will be with it running that result. But how that gets displayed, that's all still being worked out, and I leave that to the county. I can only give the sort of message that we've been passed on to us because it's their tabulation and they own it. So
Thank you. Leah.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask the question that Lori put into Q&A because I had the same one, which was, knowing all of this, does that mean that people are going to know who's ranked highest and then second and third in this process? And when will they know that?
is the question like, will we know who got the most first rankings and who got the most like that? Is that the question? I mean, we'll certainly know who ended up with the most votes.
Yeah. I think, I can't speak for Lori, but for me, I'm more wondering, I feel like I've heard this question as we've been out in the community already, wanting to know but who's going to be first place? Like people want to know who's like the first place candidate in their district. I don't have a good answer for that when people ask.
So like you're saying within a multi-winner election, who got them? Yeah, we will know the percent. So when it runs, the software will show you how this gets displayed. That's still getting determined. That's something the county's going to need to determine how they want to report these results. But what will absolutely show up in the results is you will see each round that they got, a percent, how many of our votes. And then even if those votes are reallocated, they still got those initial votes. So in the end, everybody kind of, because we reallocate the surplus votes, everybody sort of ends up at that 25% plus one. But you will, like, if you go by round, you will see that, whatever candidate got, 41%, and then the rest is reallocated. And then the next, person got this many, 29%, and then that was reallocated. So you will have that information. I would want to stress, all of the candidates are getting elected. The process is, it runs through a process. They all got enough votes to win, and they're all elected the same as anybody else. So I know there may be some subjective feelings about who got the most votes, but it will make zero difference on January 1st when they go to take office. They'll all be exactly the same.
Of course, yeah, it's been surprising how many people are interested in that piece of it. So. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to do my pause again because those were great questions, and just wait a second, see if anything else is coming to people's minds. Okay. Thank you, James, for that. Maybe I'll take my privilege of speaking right now to just ask. So, based on kind of folks' feedback from this group, when we might have available kind of the next iteration of that train the trainer for folks to go out and do.
That's Sophia. Do you have an answer for that? Yeah.
I have an answer. So I think I've been working with June to figure out essentially how to adapt this train the trainer. We obviously see different needs. So we see train the trainer presentation that is combined with your already existing community briefing presentation. We see that as one of the needs for this kind of community briefing presentation. And then we see a refined train the trainer that is just focused on, right, RCV for folks that really want to learn more, or if any other GTAC member wants that presentation, or the community member. So I'm going to begin working on both of those versions based on the edits that you all provided us. I think someone has a briefing coming up early next week. So my priority is going to be working on one for you all that you can all go out and give to community. I know you all are getting a lot of questions about RCV. So that's my goal, is to get a good version for you all next week, so you can do those briefings, and then throughout the rest of the month, adapt the existing train the trainer.
Thanks, Sophia. Amy.
I am curious, you know, if we're out there giving these presentations, I think there could be room for just kind of 20 different people giving it 20 different ways. And I'm thinking about, how do you streamline and kind of reduce the risk as much as possible? We have a core template that we're using, but is there ever a thought that we might merge in the ranked choice video that's being planned for the public and pull that into this presentation? So we're all starting with 50% of the same core and not reinterpreting these slides individually quite as much.
One answer I do have for that is, we're in the process, and this will come up when we start talking to you about our work plan and the voter ed plan. But one of the main parts of our plan will be a 2024 election landing page, and one of the main resources on that page will be a educational material and resource page, which we will have that we intend to direct as many people as possible to that one location, and that will have a one sheet, a one pager that you can use. It'll have a video that you can share. It'll have, a printout that you can use, a presentation you can use. It'll kind of have all these toolkit pieces there in one place, so that if we send everybody to the same place and get the same material, hopefully that will answer. I'm realistic. I fully understand that, everybody speaks a little bit differently. Everybody sort of has different levels of understanding of this and different biases. So it's impossible to have, if you want multiple people giving training, you're going to have slightly different trainings. But I think we can mitigate as much of that as possible, as having all of the resources and the materials coming from one place. So absolutely with the video, but even beyond that, anything that we create as material out of our voter education budget is going to be available on this site for people to take to their communities and pass out.
It will be nice to have that toolkit, and eventually we'll no longer be giving presentations where we hold more of the information kind of behind kind of our door, but most people will have done a lot of research before the presentation that they're attending, and then just bringing questions to us. So
Thank you, Amy. Sophia.
Yeah, I think something else that I wanted to add for the trainer that I totally forgot about is, we'd love to also maybe get a volunteer from this group to record you all giving that presentation once we have a really solid presentation, so we can put that on our website as well. We know that, we might not be able to fulfill, I'm just assuming, right, in the future, every briefing request, but it might be super easy to be able to share like copy of recording the presentation. So I'd love to see if we can collaborate that in the future.
Thank you. And there was a question in the chat, and I know I am going to move us on in a minute because I bet a lot of this will be addressed. But do we know now when the video will be available?
It is on our timeline. I don't remember off the top of my head. When we get to that part, though, we cover it in our timeline. The website will be up in January. The video will not be immediately available because it takes time to sort of get the vendors for these and to produce these videos. The county will also be making a video that we will kind of share the usership of, that we thank them very much for. But again, that video, these are things that aren't going to be happening until like spring timeframe. But the website will be up in January, and there will begin to be material on the website. So there'll be resources available. The video specifically will come a little bit later. And then I did see a question about languages. Yeah, we have in our budget, we will be doing translations. We have some standard languages that we are making sure to translate in. A lot of our resources will be in the 9 primary languages that the city tries to always use. And then beyond that, we've got budget for translators and for anything else. Yeah. Oh, and level of education, we're running kind of everything through like an 8th grade level is what we're shooting for. So the language should always, we're trying to always have an 8th grade level language. There are some occasions where we have found that it's borderline impossible to kind of hit that because there's just some language. But in those instances, we're trying to additionally include extra, flow charts, videos, anything that we think is really hard to pare down to an 8th grade reading level. Then we're trying to add extra stuff so they have multiple ways to kind of interpret it and bring it in, and hopefully that will help everybody get a good understanding.
Jose, go ahead.
Yes. While it might be easy to translate most things, like if we're doing a presentation in Spanish, say, there are a lot of governmental words that are not as easily attainable for even those of us who are fluent in Spanish. Can we possibly have like a list of common words or difficult phrases from ranked choice voting in Spanish or possibly other language too? Because I think that'd be really helpful.
So the first thing I'll say is we purposely are contracting with a vendor that the county has used that has an election team. We're not that there's a city preferred vendor, but we're actually going through a state and county vendor that has an election team. So they have experience specifically doing translations of things like ranked choice voting and the sort of election jargon in that world. We wanted to do that for exactly what you're talking about, because we know that there's sometimes things that don't translate well. And if you don't have experience doing that, then there may be some confusion and something lost in translation. So that's the first thing I want to say, that we're trying to head that off as much as we can. I think I don't think there's any reason why we can't, kind of work to see what, I think it won't come right away, because we sort of have to get to a point where the material needs to exist, and then we can kind of pull from the material the words that we think are going to be sort of lost in translation, that might be more confusing, or just words that don't exist in certain languages. So in those cases, I think that's something we can provide. It just may not come right away.
Yeah, I just want to say that they're already requesting presentations about GTAC in Spanish, because I have a few of the books already. So I have this question already because these words are already part of our current presentation, not as in depth. So whenever you can, just send it over. Thanks.
Thank you all so much. I'm gonna have us switch gears. That was a great conversation. Welcome, Fred. No worries, we're switching gears. So we were just kind of doing a update on the Train the Trainer session, feedback, some more questions, refinement. So if we can go to the next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Sophia, and we're going to start talking about the work plan and budget for voter education.
Yes. Welcome, Fred. Perfect timing. Hi, everyone. Sophia Alvarez Castro, she, her pronouns. So I'm just going to take a moment, and we want to start talking about just citywide voter education plan and budget. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, perfect. So we just wanted to take a moment, right, to provide you all with an update on what our voter education plans are, along with our partners. We've been planning our just citywide voter education strategies to really educate Portlanders on the election methods and form of government. We are really fortunate to have a lot of partners who are collaborating on voter education efforts, and really to help us organize and streamline our voter education efforts. A city staff created a voter education plan that provides a kind of general overview of what the city's transition team and elections office approach to voter education is. You all received a copy of this plan as part of your meeting materials, but we just wanted to take a moment to walk you through the plan and the activities we're planning. In the plan, as you might have seen, and it's okay if you didn't get a chance to take a look at it, we're still accepting edits and comments, because I'll walk through the plan. We'll collaboratively walk through the plan. But as you might have seen, you are a key partner in this voter education work. For some background context, in the creation of this plan, we took into consideration the work that you all have approved. So that includes your transition community engagement plan, our understanding of what this committee's charges and scope, and then your most recent approved work plan. So we understand that from your work plans, some of your goals are to include which include to support the execution of citywide voter education campaign, to support public education and engagement efforts on the transition to ranked choice voting, and just guide efforts to align with the city's core values. So we kind of took some of that into consideration as we were drafting this plan. Next slide. Okay, this might be a little hard to see, but maybe we could put in the chat on the plan if you want to zoom into it, but I'll walk through it. So as I shared, we have a lot of great partners that are really working collaboratively on voter education. And really to make sense of all the different partners we have and the relationships, we created this Venn diagram. Sorry if it's a little complicated, but we really just wanted to highlight the focus and or expertise of each of our respective partners as it relates to voter education, as well as the staffing and the people that are behind the work. So internally, we found this really helpful just to highlight again, kind of what are the areas of voter education where there's really maybe more coordinated collaborative efforts. You know, I think a great example of this is our work with the county on ranked choice voting. The county is a partner in this work as they're going to do it as they do voter education and administer elections, but they'll also be taking on ranked choice voting in 2026. So we want to make sure that we're working with them early on this. So I'm just going to take a moment to highlight kind of the key kind of focus for each of these different partners, and then we'll kind of deep dive into the plan. So for the transition team, we have the hard to reach voter contract in coordination with the communications team to create the materials that we're going to do. For you all's GTAC, we have guidance and development on our voter education strategy and support of implementation. For the elections office, we have our candidate guide and candidate learning sessions. For Multnomah County, we have election administration and voter education, and I realized that it cut off from there. And then from our hard to reach voter contract, we have the train the trainer, media strategy, and then coordination and outreach management. And then of course, RCV experts with our national consultant. Collaboratively, however, with the transition team, you all, and the elections office, we see the co-development of our voter education strategies and the budget spending and tracking. So figure out what activities we're doing and how we're spending our dollars. In collaboration with the transition team, the hard to reach voter contract, Multnomah County, and the elections office, we're focusing on RCV messaging, best practices, and the overall sub-grant process. The elections office in Multnomah County, they're more focused on candidate education than we are. So this Venn diagram has been helpful for us just to highlight again, kind of the different partnerships and kind of the areas of focuses kind of for our respective partners.
Thanks. Or were you about to say one other thing?
I was gonna say, this is a great place for questions. Yeah, before we kind of deep.
Perfect. Fred.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Sophia. Clarification on this chart, where the circles overlap, there's coordination, there's collaboration. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the areas where we see that we'll have to we're collaborating.
All right, so it seems as though the GTAC, the subcommittee, has nothing to do with candidate education. Is that correct? Or ranked choice voting, best practices, messaging, grant process?
I guess,
or hard to reach voter contract management coordination with commissioner's team.
So I guess from looking at this workshop, it could be perceived that way, but you are giving
okay.
feedback. Yeah, you're right. That's a good edit though that we should make on that. You are definitely big edits on the candidate guide and the sessions. So that's one of them. Sorry, James, did you want to speak to that?
Well, I was just going to say, I think to clarify, I think what the intention is to show that you're absolutely co-developing the strategy and the plan and like giving us feedback on how we do it. You won't be actually doing the candidate education,
of course,
like the learning sessions and the guide or something that our offices produce. So I think that was I think there could be some more clarity there, but that's a good point. So you absolutely are helping us give feedback. Like you gave great feedback on the guide and things like that.
Yeah,
it just separates who actually does
it. James, I'm talking to, potential candidates are approaching me, and I'm thinking, well, just hang on, or at least get form your principal campaign committee and file with Orstar and get a treasurer. And I don't know that they all know that now, but it doesn't look like we have any coordination with any candidate education strategies you're going to take that on by yourself with the
Well-
election office, with the
Well,
moment.
we are taking on the actual like formal education. I mean, if candidates approach you, of course, I mean, answer the questions the best you can. If you can direct them to us, that's great. We fully expect that to happen. The formal education provided by the city, that is something that the election office is doing on our own. The providing us feedback on how that happens, that's absolutely something we see you being a part of. So like the candidate guide that we produced, that's something that it's candidate education specifically, but we wanted you all to give feedback on that because we absolutely value the feedback you give on what the plan is. Yeah.
Happy to help.
You'll help with
Thank
the plan in place and then we'll implement.
Good. Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Perhaps a different way to frame like little bullet points is that within each of those circles, we see those are some of the core responsibilities or deliverables that those prospective partners are responsible for. That doesn't exclude other folks from collaborating in those other efforts. Any other quick questions before maybe we dive into kind of, okay, what does this actually mean in terms of voter education? Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. Okay, so you all probably seen the slide before. We presented it at your October 3rd full GTAC meeting. But our focus with the city transition team, elections office, the county really has been focused on developing robust, nonpartisan, multilingual, accessible voter education. We really hope to create educational materials that meet all the needs of Portlanders, from folks who, you know, want to know the ins and outs of tabulation to the folks who might just want to know how to fill their ballot. So we hope with this three-pronged approach that we're meeting the needs of all Portlanders. So the first one, which we'll touch base on, is broad voter education using existing channels. So this is a large voter education campaign trying to prioritize the channels that already exist, whether that's communication or outreach channels. The second is candidate education. We understand that educating candidates and providing them with the right information is one of the best tools and effective ways to really reach Portlanders. And then the last one is our partnership focused on hard to reach voters. So voters who, Portlanders who the city has traditionally left out of City Hall decision making and providing those materials. So we'll touch base on all three of these approaches and kind of our overall timeline. So I'll pass it back to James to talk about voter education for candidates.
Thank you, Sophia. So as we sort of already covered some of this, but I'll briefly cover what our plan is and what we're already doing and ways that you all can kind of help us with that. So as you've already seen, we had a candidate guide version 1 went out a little earlier in the year. That's kind of our main touch point. It's meant to be a really comprehensive guide that a candidate can pick up on day one of deciding to be a candidate. And our hope is that even if not every piece of information the candidate might ever need to know is in there, it will at least direct you to where to find that information. And there's large overviews of even the information that we didn't think was relevant for it being in there directly. So version 1 went out. We got lots of public feedback. We got a ton of feedback from you all and from the general public and from a lot of experts out there. So now we're finalizing version 2, and we expect that to be out. I think January 5th is our day that we'll have that stamped as effective, just in time for the candidate learning sessions that will happen. The reason why the candidate guide is seen, we use this as a voter education tool, is because there's a section in there, a large section that will be specific about the changes to the election methods in 2024. So we go over the new government roles, the districts, and then we do a good bit about ranked choice voting. We give summaries and overviews of it. We give a flow chart that we put in there, which you all haven't seen because we added it for version 2, but I think it helps a lot. And we added some diagrams and some explanations of the different ways that a ballot can, should, and shouldn't be filled out to get the best voter intent. So our hope is, obviously, as we said before, is we pass that off to candidates in these learning sessions. We really push it and we make it clear to candidates that, you know, the best way for you to get elected is by the voters properly filling out a ballot that you talk to. So we want to make sure you pass on that information. Our first candidate learning sessions are scheduled and are rolling ahead, and we're ready to go with them. Those will be January 8th and 10th in the evening. So it'll be 6 to 8 p.m. on each of those days. The one on January 8th will be a live session at the Community Music Center. And then the January 10th session will be a virtual session, most likely on Zoom. So that session, any overflow that we get, the Community Music Center can fit about 100 people. So any overflow we get from that, we'll send a virtual session. And then we just know some candidates would kind of prefer to attend a training kind of this early in the year in a more virtual space. So we wanted to provide both of those options. These will both be 2-hour events. They'll be the exact same event, so candidates don't need to go to both. And they'll cover, most of what is really going to be covered there is candidate filing and about campaign finance, because those are the things that candidates usually mess up the most and that need to know this early on the most. But there will also be a good section, a broad section on ranked choice voting and how they can best pass that information on to their constituents. These sessions will include, like, my office, the elections office, will be overseeing and running these sessions, but they'll include representatives from the county to talk about voters pamphlet and resources they can give. The Secretary of State's office will be there to talk about OrStar. We'll have small donor elections there to talk about participation in their program and give an overview of that. And we'll have Tate White will be there for the transition team to talk about the new roles of counselors and the mayor and how that's changing, so that candidates can kind of understand what it is they're getting into. The next thing is the misinformation events. These are still sort of being formed and constructed. This is something we expect will happen around in the springtime. And these really we're right now we have contract is the right word because it's free, but we're working with a nonprofit called Protect Our Elections. And they basically survey social media and various newspapers and all this media out there. And they look for various events of misinformation and misconstrued information and disinformation, and they put that all into a report, and they give us that report every month. So we will start to receive that next month, and then we're going to look at that over time, begin to develop a plan of what is the most prevalent misinformation in Portland, like what is our best plan for attacking that, and then sometime in the spring we'll have some kind of event that we're kind of calling a debunking event. And then a lot of that information will also end up on our landing page that we're creating as a kind of myth versus fact form. The more we see the misinformation we see out there, we'll try to address that directly and head on. So that's an event that hasn't yet been decided, but will exist sometime. And then the election dashboard is something that will also end up on the landing page. And we sort of see this as a tool that could be useful for candidates or voters, but it's essentially a data analytics tool that will gather demographic and voter information, voter turnout and things, and then compile that together into data visualizations and specifically an interactive map that people can use. And it'll just be useful for kind of seeing the history of who voted where and turnouts in various districts. And that will be reformulated. The data will be reformulated to show up in the districts as we're going to create them. So candidates and voters can kind of get that information and see how the districts will kind of lay out with demographic information with voter turnout. So that's those are the main things that we're focusing on this year in candidate education. And then I'm happy to answer questions about that.
Thank you, James. Amy and then Terry.
I'm just curious if people have to register to attend the January in-person or Zoom session.
Yeah, so we are, because there's only so much seating, and then the Zoom session, we don't, it's not going to be open to the public. Anyone can attend, of course, but because the candidates can kind of be a sensitive audience, and we don't want, like a whole bunch of media showing up or something, or making, we want it to be a learning environment. So the registration will be required. And on December 8th, the transition newsletter comes out on December 8th, and that'll be the first announcement for them. And that's when our registration will go live. So we have it all set up and it's available now, but we'll actually begin releasing the registration to the public. And then you can choose which event you want to go to. And if you choose the virtual event, we'll send you a link to the Zoom.
Could I ask a quick follow-up? Would it be possible to have a member of the subcommittee be a fly on the wall in one of those sessions? I guess I just kind of want to stitch together everything that we think candidates are going to be absorbing and asking questions about with what we're hearing from the public and informing the public about, just kind of bringing all those sorts of things together by being a fly on the wall.
Yeah, one, I don't see any problem with that. And then two, we'll also, the virtual session will get recorded, all but there'll be a Q&A at the end. We won't record the Q&A to kind of, so that people can feel they can ask whatever questions. But basically the first hour and a half, just the presentation material, that'll be recorded on the 10th. And then on the 12th, the January newsletter for the transition team goes out on the 12th. So the video, a link to the video, and will go out of the newsletter, and it will be up on the landing page so that anybody can kind of see what happened in that session. So they'll be available to the public after those first sessions happen, because we want anybody to be able to see them. You have to register to be at these specific events, but then once they're there, minus the Q&A, that'll be available publicly. But like I said, yeah, I don't think we have a problem with a GTAC member attending one of those.
Thanks. Terry, you're okay? Okay. Destiny, go ahead.
Just a quick question. On top of sending out the registration publicly, will the team also be sending out personal invitations to people who have identified that they're planning to run or are already doing the filings?
Yeah, so we have in the elections office, we have sort of we call it our universe of contacts. So everything will be available publicly, and they'll go out on social media posts that will just sort of be a broad public reach. But then we will also do a press release that will go to our universe of contacts, and that includes anybody who's requested information from the elections office or requested to be on those or any like civics organizations are on there and things like that. A lot of nonprofits are on there that work in that world, and then we've sort of added also in that people who have publicly declared themselves as candidates. There's a weird gray crossover of some people have not really publicly declared themselves, but they may have filed something that the media might know that they're interested, but they haven't publicly declared. So there's like a weird gray area of people that might not get it. So I don't want to say that every single person that is currently a candidate will receive one, but our intention is to get it out there as well as we can.
Leah, and then I'm going to read a couple questions from the chat.
Sounds good. I'll be really quick with this. I think this is more of a June thing. Could we get some of this information put into our general GTAC presentation at this point so that we can also be sharing about candidate learning sessions?
It looks like that was a thumbs up from June. So I'm guessing double thumbs up.
Yes,
thumbs up.
I also saw a thumbs up. So there are, there's kind of a series of these, so I'll maybe, I think there's more interest, so I'll maybe let James speak more to it. I think it seems like there's a fair amount of interest from maybe this advisory committee more broadly, but certain members of this subcommittee to come. I'm wondering at some point though, also if we're then someone said maybe taking seats away from folks who plan on running for office, and is there like a volunteer role that GTAC or members of this subcommittee could play, like signing people in or welcoming people, similar to how folks did for the Independent District Commission hearings?
So this is what I'll say is, I hope that we fill every seat and we're turning people away from the live event. I really hope that we're that successful. It's 100 seats. So far in this year, there have been a lot of these organizations, these candidate trainings, and they have not been that successful. I think people may not realize that it really still has been very early in this process without a primary election. I think people are often getting ahead of themselves. We kind of feel January is the earliest you could do something like this. There'll be a lot of fundraising events and a lot of candidates announcing in January. So what I would say is, if there are seats available, then absolutely, I don't think we have a problem with GTAC members attending because of sort of the role that you have as this public representative. However, I would not want to give away a bunch of seats. Like if every GTAC member wanted to attend and we're full, what I will say though is that then we can give you a Zoom invitation and you can come to the virtual event, so you can still sit in, you can still see what's happening, and the video will always be available. So if you really just wanted the information and that's all you're interested in, if you wait till the end of that week, by Friday the video should be ready and to go, and you can view that. And then if you have follow-up questions specifically, you have you have a platform and access to city staff that other people do not have. So we would be more than happy to do a follow-up at some future meeting to answer specific questions about those sessions. What I will say is, like I said, the majority of those sessions are not really going to be about like the type of voter education that we are talking about generally in these meetings, because the nature of candidate education, they need most of the information they need is about how to file, how to avoid campaign finance violations, things like that. Those are things we have to cover, and then we're also covering this stuff. So yes, you're welcome to attend and get that information and pass that on. I would never turn down people passing on training, but just be aware a lot of the information is not what is typically going to fall under. Like I wouldn't waste too much of your time trying to spread campaign finance trainings around the city, because I just think it's very complicated and it's not really your main role. But you can use your time as you would like.
Thanks, James. Let's take Fred and then let James maybe move to his next slide. Fred, go ahead.
James, just because as soon as a potential candidate solicits a contribution and receives one, they have to file with Orstar, and they don't always have to say what position they're vying for. But are you monitoring? Orstar is somebody at the Secretary of State's office keeping track of people who are between now and January, say, or you can't file with the city until after the primary, right? Officially, but you have to file with Orstar when you start raising money. know if you could monitor Orstar for Portland City candidates, that's another way to know who to reach to inform them of these sessions.
Yep, and that is something we kind of include. Again, like you said, sometimes people raise money, and there are rules about you sort of have a certain period of time to declare what office you are running for, but there's some gray area in there with the offices and what they're called and things. So with that all in mind, we're sort of, I don't necessarily want to like assume that someone that is in Orstar is clearly running for this. But yeah, we're trying to reach as many candidates and people as we can.
Just a way to notify them of opportunity to.
Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, like you said, people can't file with the city until June 5th of next year. That's when filing opens to be on the ballot. So people will file on Orstar long before they actually are filed with us if they raise any money at all. So yes, we are using that as a resource and looking at it. But again, I think our best approach is to really just get the message out there, make sure, it's going to be a link to a registration. So it's very easy to reshare it. People can spread it around to their communities, and we can try to get as much word out there as possible, trying to target each individual that we think is going to be running as a candidate, come next November, like that I think is, we kind of get diminishing returns on, but it's certainly a resource that we're utilizing.
James, can we maybe move along? Thank you.
Yes, I think the next slide is, our timeline, right. Yeah, so I kind of covered this already, but our candidate guide, we're wrapping it up in December. We expect to be done. We're going to mark it as effective date in January. Our hard deadlines to make sure we have it ready to go before the candidate session, so that people can get access to the new guide and be reviewing it before they show up at those learning sessions. And then the learning sessions we will do 4 more sessions in May and maybe early June, basically in the window between the primary election in May and the filing opening on June 5th. We want to do a session in every district. So we'll do, out at a location that's in the district, kind of directly to the candidates. And those will be larger, kind of more comprehensive sessions to kind of cover all the bases, and it'll be a little more fleshed out and a little more involved. As I said, with the misinformation events, we haven't finalized scheduling any of that, but it'll happen. We expect it to be sometime late spring. And then the dashboard is kind of being developed right now. We expect some version of it to be ready for launch when we bring the website up. And then, as I said, candidate filing is from June 5th to August 27th. And then we go to the next. And I'll pass it back to Sophia.
Thanks, James. Okay, so I'm just going to go over the different activities and deliverables or materials that we are planning for that we see that fit under this broad voter education, utilizing our existing communications channel, which I realize is a really long name, so I'm trying to pivot to broad voter education. So as James mentioned, we're going to have a robust website or a landing page. The address for that is going to be portland.gov/vote or vote 2024. So super easy for folks to use. That will be where, again, all of our materials will live. We'll have our community engagement events, any opportunities that we have, really where we're going to be directing the public to hold of all materials. This is where we'll also have, again, all the stuff about these candidate sessions and where we'll be linking information to them. We hope to have this website up by early January in preparation for the first candidate session that James just mentioned. The second item you see on the screen is a ranked vote RCV platform. So I think we might have talked to some of you about this. It's essentially an interactive platform that's focused on voter experience for folks to run a mock election. We're paying for an added feature for this. So 6 months leading up to election, if there are specific community groups that want to use this platform, we'll be able to give them access and they'll be able to adapt the ballot. So for example, if you all are going to, I don't know, a neighborhood association briefing or something like that, and they want access to this platform, they would be able to run a mock election with, I don't know, if they're going to be voting for someone in their office or if they want to vote for anything specifically. I think the example we've used internally has been if, let's say, the city's parks and rec want to use it and they want to vote on their favorite park, right? They can adapt that platform. James, feel free to step in if anything I missed there. James is an expert on this platform more than I am.
No, it's perfect. I just want to highlight that we really feel that this is a primary part of the education plan, because we think walking through the process and getting is really, we've found, is the number one way for people to understand it and realize how simple it is to just do it. So at all the events we have, every possible opportunity that we will have to utilize this tool, we're going to utilize it, because it's the number one way for someone to understand and be like, oh, this is really easy, I can do this. So yeah.
Yep. So yeah, that will be live on our website, and it's currently being developed. It'll be translated into all the 9 languages as well, so that'll be accessible for folks. The next deliverable we have is just an FAQ. So that's something that's already in development. We understand that you're getting a lot of questions, so we're going to be putting all of these FAQs on our website, but as well, we'll be giving the full list of FAQ kind of questions and answers to 311. So if folks call in with questions about this, they have that to reference right away. And if for some reason there's a question they can't answer, 311 then can direct us to city staff to answer those questions. Very similar, we'll have fact sheets with materials that we create. So we'll have those on the website. We have an educational comic. So this, so the Charter Commission created an educational comic on the 3 changes. And so we were hoping to use, since that's an investment that's already out and it's already been created, we thought we could just reuse that comic and adapt it so it's more focused on ranked choice voting. It would be a real minimal investment, and our thought again here would be to translate that comic so we could use it with our youth. I know that that's a stakeholder that you all mentioned at the October 3rd meeting, and that I think would be really helpful when going to high schools or talking to folks at tabling events, etc. The next one is a community presentation. So that's essentially the briefing presentation that you will mostly be using. So we hope to create different versions of that, translate it, and as well record, hopefully with one of you giving that presentation and post it on our website. Hopefully we can find folks that speak more than English, and then we can give that as well in different languages. The next is the RCV video. So the county has agreed to partner with us to create a RCV voter education video. So they're working on that. So Scotty, feel free to, if anything you want to add there, feel free to jump in. But in addition to that, we were thinking of creating a video that highlights the 3 main changes that Portlanders can expect that would be in parallel with this RCV video that the county is creating. The next is our paid media and paid social and media campaign. So we have allocated some funds for paid media campaign, as well as the county, as well we have some funds in the contract that we'll speak in a little bit. So the idea is there to work with you all to see how we can coordinate a robust paid media campaign throughout this next year. The next is a mailer to every Portland household and a ballot insert. So we've budgeted for essentially 4 slightly different versions of one mailer that would be going out to every Portland household. We are envisioning it could be the ballot and then letting know folks what district they're in. And so then again, it would direct folks to go to the website to find all the more detailed information. So we'd hope that would go out around when ballots drop. And then the last 3 are more kind of activities. So we're planning for community tabling events. So again, working with 311, the city county partner, they do a lot of tabling all over the summer. So they volunteered to take essentially all of the educational materials we create and bring them to all the tabling events that they go to. So working with them to join future tabling events. James, you want to step in?
Well, I just stepping back real quick. I just want to include on there. It's the mailer and we have a ballot insert.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So yeah, the counties have been an amazing partner, and they're going to let us put basically a 1-pager into the actual ballot itself. So every voter that receives their ballot at home and opens it up, there will be an insert in. We haven't quite decided what the best information will be in there, because obviously the day you're getting your ballot, the type of information that's most useful to you is a little different than like a month before you get your ballot. But we want to make sure that's an incredible tool. They're giving it to us at a very, very good price, and it'll be similar to the mailer, but obviously in the ballot, it only goes to people that are registered voters, and it'll be slightly different information.
Yes, thank you. I totally skipped over that one. Okay, tabling events and then community briefings and community town halls. So we hope to work with June and Julia to coordinate more community briefings, so helping do that stakeholder outreach to give these community presentations. I hope that maybe in a future meeting we can have a conversation about just stakeholder mapping and see what groups you all are reaching out to and what groups we need to reach out to over the next couple of months as we're done creating all these materials. And then for lastly, we have community town halls. So in late summer, early fall, so September, October, really planning for community town halls open for anyone in the public to come learn about ranked choice voting. And so we envision that being a community presentation, hopefully maybe given by one of you all, right, where we kind of go over essentially your presentation and then have time for Q&A. Hoping we could do maybe a hybrid version in person. And so looking to also collaborate and coordinate that with you all. And I realize there's one thing missing from here that we haven't touched about is summer interns. So we've allocated some funding for to hopefully have 2 summer interns to help us during the summer. So they would help kind of step in here and help fill gaps, because we know there's a lot of people we need to educate.
Sophia, do you want to just go over your next timeline slide, and then we'll take questions on all of the things that you just shared?
Yeah, I'll just, because of time, I might just fly over this timeline, is just since you'll have access to it. But I think what I'll share is that we're really trying to upfront all the material development from now on through early spring, so that when, late spring, summer comes, we can have all the materials essentially either final or almost final, so that we can begin our summer outreach, have all those things, not have to worry about any materials, and then in late summer, fall, go really heavy and hard on the outreach.
Thank you. Questions, thoughts? Leah, go ahead.
Thank you. Like a lot of people, I think from the comments, I am ridiculously excited about the RCV platform that could be used in different ways. From this, it looks like it's not live until May. What is there that we could be doing between now and then to gather information about groups that might be interested in using it so that they're all teed up for it? Or is that a conversation for another day?
Sophia, you want me to take that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so yes, we have access to the platform now. What will happen in May, the 6 months before the election, will be when we open up the partnership program, and when we begin, we just have this timeline of we don't want to do really crazy outreach on ranked choice voting while people are preparing for the primary, because the primary won't have ranked choice voting. So we're trying to avoid confusion, do the county a favor, and not create additional voter confusion. So that's when the platform will sort of be live and big to the public. We have access to the platform now in a smaller use case. So there will be some events we'll use it at. And I think we could probably figure out on like a case-by-case basis, like to have it available at an event. We sort of have one account that is accessible. Starting in May, we'll be able to give out accounts essentially to I think we budgeted for like 30 partners a month or something. So we'll be able to budget out to partners because it's 30 and we're not going to give an account to like every single person that asks, but these are meant to be like kind of the larger organizations. So what I would say is between now and then, certainly spread the word about it, spread the word about the possibility, see if there's interest, and look at what kind of like who would be useful for. With that in mind, we're also happy to just share information on the platform itself because it's a public platform. Like we're creating this partnership program so that we basically will be paying for people's accounts, but anyone can go sign up for the account and use it. So if they would like. So with that in mind, I think we can share that information and they're welcome to do that. If they want to be a part of the partnership program, I would say collect the information, pass it to us, and then we can, we'll be doing outreach for that before May, because May is when it goes live. So we'll probably be doing outreach, I would say March, April timeframe. And then hopefully that kind of answers what you're looking for.
It does. One real quick follow-up to that is if there's any information that you have now that we could share with groups, if you could send links to us or whatever. I think I've got ideas, but also know people who are interested in this specific thing. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there's we're sorry, Julie, just there's a demo that we have that we can send you a link to a demo so that you can even show, like you can just give the partners the demo and be like, this is what the platform does, this is how it walks through. We love the platform, we think it's really great, but let them see it themselves and then they can kind of make a determination if it's something they would find useful. So we can send that along.
Thanks. I'm going to take one from the chat. Sorry if I missed this, but can community members volunteer to go through some sort of train the trainer and then help present to the community?
Yes, so that's definitely something that we can do. And that's why we're hoping to have all these materials translated early on and have the recordings so that we can give that train the trainer for folks who want to help educate folks.
Thank you. Fred. Fred, you're muted.
Cinco de Mayo, I know that the primary is not till the third Tuesday in May, but Cinco de Mayo is a big waterfront park celebration and a good audience to reach out, probably not to confuse people with general election ballots, but still some outreach for tabling. And there may be some other events that are community specific, certain communities that would begin before June, where we would want to table as well, just for outreach and communication, if not ranked choice voter ballot education. Something to consider. I noticed just looking at the calendar, I don't know that that's set in stone, but I appreciate the point of not talking about ranked choice voting for the primary ballot.
I'm seeing head nods. Bill, let's take your question, and then if folks have other questions on this prong of the strategy, please put them in the chat. Staff will continue to answer them now or after the meeting. I want to make sure we get to the final prong. Bill, go ahead.
My question is general. James is, I'm hearing preparation of all these documents. Can I affirm or just ask when a draft is, I think it has to be available for the public, but as a matter of course, can you share that with our subcommittee or with GTAC for feedback? I'm trying to narrow down where we in GTAC can be most effective. Community outreach, yes. Review, giving feedback on documents, I think could be good too.
I think Sophia might be better suited to answer this, and I'll pass it to Sophia. What I will say is, certainly the things coming out of my office, out of the auditor's office and elections office, we think anything we produce that's related to elections, we have no problem with passing it through you all and getting you to look at it. The caveat is that there are some like vendor produced things that it's not part of the process because of what they're producing something and then delivering it to us. So there is obviously some way in, and we're giving them like requirements of what they need to produce, but those things it just doesn't logistically work to kind of get drafts produced. And like that was true with the RCV platform. Like we gave them design requirements and they went and developed, but we didn't like get a draft. We just now have access to the platform. So I think the same thing may be true in some cases, like with our, with Samantha and Grace and our contractors, hard to reach stuff. Like they have their own contract to produce, and they're going to talk about that in a second here when I stop blabbing. But I will say that we are trying to get your input on as many things as we possibly can. There are just some things that sort of logistically, the way it's produced, it doesn't really make sense to have you part of the review, the draft review process. But once it is available to us, we will, and the public, we will absolutely make sure to highlight it for you, and you can give us feedback and we can sort of correct and make it better as we go forward. So it's sort of it's just a process thing. We've tried to do the best we can. And, we want as much feedback as you're willing to give us.
Thanks, James. Could we go to the next slide? And I think, Sophia, this might be back to you. Thank you.
Thanks. Actually, I'll pass it now to Samantha and Grace.
Awesome. So, hey, everybody. I'm Samantha Gladue. I use she, they pronouns and endpoint on the city's contract, focusing on reaching communities who have historically lacked access to city government decision-making. And this is info that you've heard before in the October GTAC meeting. So this is a refresh. But regrounding, our strategy includes a multilingual media campaign, creation of nonpartisan voter education materials, and also coalition outreach and subgrants to spread voter education messaging using a variety of strategies, including direct voter contact, community building events, and communications. And our timeline on the next slide, if you could go to that, please, has 4 main phases spread out over 2 fiscal years, which includes planning, capacity and coalition building, educating and engaging voters, and getting out the vote. And we are currently in the planning phase, creating key messages and processes. And this includes work on developing the request for proposals process for subgrants, as well as subgrant agreements, which will be approved by the city attorney and reiterate elements of the contract, including that subgrants are restricted to permissible uses, like C3 permissible uses, which I'm happy to talk more about. And we're excited to continue to collaborate with you and integrate your feedback. I think the way that James described the feedback and input process was very well put. And we do want to iterate as much as we possibly can and understand how much you're talking to community members. So want to hear things that are coming up for you related to this aspect of voter education, and continue that to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward with regard to the themes that are coming up and how messages are resonating with community members. And I'm happy to answer questions and hear any reflections on recent conversations related to this topic. But I also know that we have one more slide on budget. So I'm excited to get to that too. And I'll pass it to Sophia and then we'll come back and have more time for questions.
Thanks. Okay, so sorry if this is kind of small on the screen, but here you can see that the items that we are budgeted and will be paid for this by the city. So this does not count the contract dollars. So for the hard to reach voter contract. Also, what's not shown in here is the budget for the candidate learning sessions, because that's coming out of a separate budget under the auditor's office. So as you can see, the remaining items we've discussed above are covered here. The first 2 columns indicate an item on our budget and what is expected to be spent in this current fiscal year, so through June. And then the arrows indicate what we'll be carrying over to the next fiscal year. One important note is that the citywide mailer is not shown as a carryover item because that cost is going to exist entirely in the next fiscal year, and it's going to be paid by an additional budget ask that's going to be coming from the auditor's office. This is unlike the rest of the 24-25 items, which are going to be paid with the remainder of the $200,000 budget that we have for this year. So I'll just kind of leave it there. It's basically most everything that we've mentioned and what we've budgeted. It will cost within this year and next year. And I think now we can take questions.
Fred, your hand is up, but I think it's from earlier, but just wanting to confirm with you.
I actually have questions on both slides, but let me go to the budget first. Community events, I think, Sophia, is that not for tabling event?
Yes.
And wouldn't there be, since it doesn't start until June, there would be carryover. I know that Gay Pride is in June, Rose Festival is in June, but there's other events through the summer, and don't they all charge? They charge. I know the county has booths. I've staffed booths for some organizations at some of these, and they charge the organization some funds. Does the city not have to pay?
Yeah, we've allocated $2,500 for some of the events that we assume that will be charged for in early spring. We assume some of these events will obviously might not be in the spring, but might be in the summer. And this also doesn't account for any tabling events that we are going to be joining 311. They will be paying for those events for like the tabling costs for that event. So that $2,500 that we have there is just for registration because we assume printing would be in the other bucket. And we already have the materials that need for tabling, so that we're really assuming would be just for registration.
Right, and it seems there would be carryover to FY 24-25.
That's true. There could be the potential. Yeah.
Yeah, there may be a lot of these events you are registering and paying for them well in advance of the actual event. Like they need to do so. A June event we would definitely be paying for in this fiscal year. I mean, it falls in this fiscal year. Right. Anything like July, August, probably also. So there may well be some carryover there, but the intention will be to pay for as much of that in this fiscal year as possible. So any event we can prepay, we will. We want to carry over as little as possible just because it gets the logistics of carrying over the budget can get a little problematic.
Boy, that could be the case. Okay, so my question to the previous slide is with the coalition outreach. I understand that there are some if you will, coalitions, organizations, or groups that are recruiting candidates for the city council races, especially what are perceived as communities that have of hard to reach voters or whose voices have not been heard historically in City Hall. But is there some guarantee? Samantha, you talked about permissible uses. Is there some way to guarantee, is that something that the auditor's office is saying you cannot, and especially in the get out the vote aspect of this, be out proponing for particular candidates?
Yeah, Fred, to your question, our contract states that these dollars from the city can only be used for C3 permissible use. And some people might not be familiar with this topic, but what Fred is describing is different types of organizations. So there are different types of nonprofit status. And what Fred alluded to of those who are engaging with candidate campaigns are 501c4 organizations. We will be working with 501c3 organizations for the most part. Like just really specifying that none of the city dollars can be used for supporting candidates. Yeah, I can definitely get into more detail here about like C3's purpose, existing for a charitable purpose, not serving any private interest, and the restrictions on them.
Samantha, but all due respect, I know many 501c3s that have 501c4s. And so if there are any of those, I'd sure like to see a list of them that you're working with.
Yeah, we're not working with any just yet on voter education specifically. There will be a process which people apply to and a committee review. And when money goes to C3s, it goes to C3s for C3 purposes, and it cannot be moved to a C4, regardless of if an organization has one, because of how federal tax laws are written and how the contract is written. So if there's any concern that money granted to a C3 could be shared with a C4 and be used for prohibited purposes, that is incorrect. And it's really important that our community knows that the money is protected by both the language in the contracts and in federal tax law. And I would love to hear also if there are specific C4s that committee members have heard concerns about, or what specific issues we should seek to solve for or prevent. So I'm really happy to hear much more about your question.
Thank you.
Terry, go ahead. And Leah, were you okay? Okay.
I need to follow up on Fred's question. It was the same question I had, and I'll just be super specific. Portland United for Change, as far as I know, does not have a C3. If it does, it's new, and it's not. I haven't seen it in GuideStar or anywhere. My worry is that, you know, like Fred said, if they're out recruiting candidates and holding events to recruit candidates, and then come out to do a purely C3 function, get out the vote, there's a blurry line as to what that organization's role in the election is. And while you can sequester the money, you can't really sort of sequester the image in the public's mind. Just taking care of the money is not enough.
To clarify, Portland United for Change is a fiscally sponsored project of the United Way of the Columbia Willamette, which has significant oversight of the project administratively in terms of legal and finance. And they are a 501c3, and no organization in their right minds would misappropriate dollars and risk their fiscal status of a nonprofit. So I really want to bottom line that, especially for this size of grant award or just period. So I think that organizations who have a dual structure really do understand compliance, and some might not be familiar with this topic of the distinction of different types of organizations. So I put in a resource in the chat, which is a comparison of permissible activities by C3s and C4s, especially for those who are like, what are you talking about? What is a C3? What is a C4? And this shows the different types of activities.
I mean, I understand that, and I just think it's important. Just you know, what's happening is United Way is taking the risk of lack of compliance, is what you're saying.
No, they're not, because we will be compliant, and Portland United.
I'm sorry. Can I?
Candidate. Okay. I want to dispel that.
Yeah, I apologize. And I know there's Destiny. I see your hand. I'm going to encourage you to put your comment or your question into the chat. James, if you have something really quick, otherwise I do want to be respectful of folks' time, and we just have a minute of wrap up to do.
Oh, I will be quick. All I want to say is Terry, I appreciate you bringing the issue up. It is something that, just so you all are aware, we are very aware of in the auditor's office and in City Hall. It is a conversation that has happened many times, and we fully intend to cover our bases, make sure that everything is being done, not just legally, but also that we understand that the appearance of fraud can be the same as fraud. So we want to be very careful about what we're doing. And we're going on. And as we know more about, there's a process that any of these organizations have to go through. They're not just going to be handed money. And that process we are going to be very careful in that process. And the city and the county are involved in that process, along with our contractor who we trust in making that decision. So I do think it's a good point to bring up. And I do, you are not alone in that concern. And we are absolutely aware, and we're going to be very careful about dealing with what is a very sensitive issue, and hopefully we will do so appropriately and inform you all as we make plans on how to do so.
Thank you, James. And I'm sure people still have questions. I think there are some in the chat. So as always, we will collect those and we will get you written responses. And if you continue to have questions, send them, right? And we can get you answers, and we can also continue the conversation. I do want to just move us to the next step slide, just to remind folks where we are and where we're going. So this meeting is live streaming on YouTube right now. Afterwards, I will put a meeting recording though on our website. We are going to have our first ever subcommittee reports at the next full committee meeting on December 5th. I will volunteer your new co-chairs, Bill and Leah, to help share that first subcommittee report. Our next subcommittee meeting is going to be the week of January 9th. You have a doodle poll in your email waiting for a couple folks. So if you haven't done that or it doesn't sound familiar to you, please take a moment so I can get that next meeting scheduled. And you also have in your email a draft, it's sort of a narrative draft of the presentation you just received. It's a draft voter education plan. You all can access the document. So just, continue to put your feedback, your questions, your comments, and when we come back together for our third meeting, we can talk through those collectively. And next slide. Again, these are just kind of all of the meetings that we have coming up. Also for members of the public listening in, all of these that have dates next to them are published on the transition website. And with that, it is 5:31. Thank you all for your participation, and we are adjourned.